with Mr. Fiscal Cliff.
Feeling lonely this holiday season? Looking for little human interaction? Do you want to feel contact in certain special places?
Then why not go through security at an airport?
The TSA.
TSA agents are ready and standing by to give you a little something extra to feel thankful about this holiday season.
The TSA.
What are you waiting for? I want to check under your testicles.
Spending time with a TSA agent couldn't be easier. Simply book a flight departing from any American airport. When selected for a full body scanner, say no. You'll be pulled aside by a TSA agent, and that's when the fun begins. And you never know who your agent will be. It could be me. Or me. Or even me.
But it's probably gonna be us. Now take off your damn shoe.
The TSA. It's our business to touch yours.
Welcome to the Bureau of Womanhood Conformity. Independent thoughts are considered subversive because all must agree with our leader.
When it comes to women, preventative care should include coverage of contraceptive services such as birth control.
You see, if you don't believe government should pay for your birth control, you're not a real woman. Womanhood denied. If you refuse to accept that pregnancy is a punishment, you're denied as well.
I don't want them punished with a baby.
If you don't believe that abortions should be allowed for any reason, if you don't believe in aborting a child for being the wrong gender, and if you don't believe that stay-at-home mothers aren't real workers, you are not a real conformed woman.
His wife has actually never worked a day in her life. His wife has actually never worked a day in her life.
Finally, for your safety, if you oppose mandatory government health care, you will die.
They will be voting to say that women can die on the floor.
These standards and regulations were formed after our glorious victory in the war on women. Thank you for your cooperation and your conformity.
Welcome back into the Palmetto Conservative Show here on the Conservative Broadcast Media Network. I'm your host, Jim Lee. Thanks for being here this evening. We were continuing part of our discussion here as we evaluate the fiscal cliff. I have as my guest here today Mr. Fiscal Cliff, and we were just talking about who he is, what he's all about, and kind of described himself as a compendium of things, and he was going through and kind of telling us what makes up that compendium, that list of things. And first of all, the fiscal cliff apparently involves something about a Bush-era tax cut, and second was the notion of sequestration and the Budget Control Act, and seems there's a couple of other things there, if memory serves. So continuing our interview here with Mr. Fiscal Cliff. Comfortable? Yeah, yes, I understand, sir. The lights are kind of hot, but it's important that we keep those on there. And what? Yeah, the room's a little bit warm, kind of humid. Yeah. What's that? Certainly, we can get you some water. So, what else is there? What other aspects make you up? What else forms this compendium that we call the fiscal cliff? Okay, the tax holiday. Now, being someone who spent a career in military intelligence, I think that sounds like as much an oxymoron as military intelligence. Tax holiday? That would be what, April 15th, when we all celebrate that we're done with tax season? Okay, the tax holiday, that was the reduction in the Social Security withholding, the employee portion of Social Security withholding. So that would affect everyone if that tax holiday were to expire. Yeah, everybody who earns up to $110,000, they would see a 2% increase right away if that tax holiday were allowed to expire. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'd heard something about this. This was supposedly a scheme, an idea that was supposed to somehow stimulate the economy. That by giving people a couple of percentage points of their Social Security withholding back each week in their paycheck, that somehow that would be spent and infused into the economy. Is that right? Okay. Um, well, how's that worked out for us? Yeah, butkus. We haven't really seen any stimulative effect from that, but now we do certainly have a positive outcome, because now we have yet another political football to play with. Because if it's allowed to expire, and I find this argument very, very interesting. If the 2% tax holiday were allowed to expire, that would be a massive tax increase on the middle class. But if we were to allow the George Bush era tax cuts to expire, the tax cuts that only benefited the rich, that would be a tax increase on the middle class. Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely have to give you high marks for whoever your marketing person was that teed those things up. You can never argue that the liberals aren't creative when it comes to marketing and hype and spin. Agreed. Okay, so you're the Bush era tax cuts being allowed to expire, the 2011 Budget Control Act and sequestration, defense spending cuts allowed to expire, the 2% tax holiday, that would be allowed to expire. What else? The alternative minimum tax. Now, I thought that the alternative minimum tax was intended to only catch those evil rich people and to prevent them from effectively taking so many deductions that they effectively would pay no income tax. Right. That's right. We failed to index the alternative minimum tax to inflation and all, and so now it tends to ensnare more and more people every year, and could tack on average up to $3,700 more onto taxpayers, including those in the middle income. Usually is targeted to affect about 5 million upper middle class families, but if allowed to go unchecked, if we don't have another temporary fix, another recurring temporary fix. By the way, we've been fixing this for decades, but without a temporary fix, this would ensnare another 26.4 million people. Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. All right. So what else makes up your compendium? It could in turn create a recession. Okay. So the next aspect of you, Mr. Cliff, is that you will have a negative impact on the economy, and could in turn spark another recession, which in turn could cause an increase in unemployment. Because our economy, of course, is growing at a rabbit's pace. I'm sorry, at a snail's pace, and we've got nowhere to go but up. Okay. Anything else? The debt ceiling. Now, wait a minute. The debt ceiling is part of the fiscal cliff. Now, how does that work? Because I thought we just increased the debt ceiling. Isn't that what ended up resulting in the Budget Control Act and sequestration? Didn't we just do this? Oh, we did, but we spent all we've borrowed all the additional money that we've been authorized to borrow, and we need to borrow some more. Does it strike you as odd that, we tend to be repeating behavior, that if the federal government were analogous to a coke addict who was given some money to go out and buy some coke and came back and told us that they'd spent all the money on other things and didn't buy their coke? Very interesting. Okay. So what is this going to do? Okay, so we currently have a national debt limit of $16.394 trillion. And depending on how things go with tax receipts and things in December and January, we could hit that limit somewhere in those 2 months. And without an increase in the borrowing authority, an increase in the debt ceiling, what happens? Nothing happens, because you know that Congress is going to cave in and do this. Okay. I can't argue with past history, although I will tell you from a Wall Street perspective, past history is no indication of future results. But I think it's probably a safe bet given the history that we have in our Congress. All right, so you're sitting here. You're armed and ready to go off. What happens if we go off the cliff? So it's an impact on the economy. Now, what about the reality? If individuals, let's bring it down to an individual level, what happens if on December 19th, which is supposedly the last day, unless Congress changes their holiday calendar, is the last day for legislation to be introduced to deal with this, to deal with you, sir? What happens? 100% of the people will be faced with an increase in their income taxes with the expiration of the Bush-era tax cuts. 100% of the people will be hit with a 2% tax increase as the tax holiday expires for those on income under $110,000. The alternative minimum tax would go into effect and ensnare not just 5 million, but 26.4 million additional people. So that's roughly 31 million people that would be impacted and have to pay up to an additional $3,700 because of the alternative minimum tax. And for gravy, on top of this, we would see the mandatory spending cuts outlined in sequestration, which require 50% of the cuts to come from defense, which makes up, last I checked, somewhere around 16% of our total budget, and the rest out of certain discretionary spending, which is laughable on its face because I was told that there really is no discretionary spending left in the federal budget. What's that? Well, I thank you for being willing to cooperate with us. What? Yes, Charlie, please take off the handcuffs. So where will you go, Mr. Cliff? Where do you go from here? How are you going to spend the holidays? You're going on a Hawaiian vacation. Because nobody wants to deal with you here anyway, so you figure you might as well go someplace and work on your tan and your surfing skills. Really? we're paying for your vacation?